He counted the coins twice before placing them on the marble counter. The cashier's smile faded. A few people behind him laughed softly. His daughter held his sleeve tighter. Eyes lowered. "Sir, we don't accept this here," the cashier said, loud enough for others to hear. Then security stepped in. "Please leave." He nodded, calm, too calm, and that's when a voice cut through the silence. "Stop." The CEO walked in, pale, her eyes locked on the man, then dropped to the coins. "Sir." The entire luxury mall froze. The cold came early that year. By the second week of November, Hartford had already pulled on its gray coat and settled in for the long haul. The sidewalks glistened with frost that didn't melt until well past noon. Breath fogged in the air, the city moved slower, heads down, collars up. Daniel Hayes noticed the cold, the way he noticed most things with precision, without complaint. He was 38 years old, though he looked older on his worst days. Right now, standing in the narrow bathroom of their apartment on Willard Street, he looked like a man somewhere in the middle, the kind of face that had earned its lines. Dark circles that weren't going away. Hands calloused from years of physical work, gripping wrenches, climbing scaffolding, hauling pipe. His knuckles were cracked from the dry winter air, and he'd wrapped the worst one in electrical tape because he hadn't gotten around to finding a bandage. He was helping Lily with her hair. She was 6 years old and had very strong opinions about her hair. "Not that tight," she said. "Sorry." He loosened the elastic. He wasn't good at this yet. He was getting better, but he wasn't good at it. 3 years since her mother left, 3 years of mornings like this, of figuring out how tight was too tight, how much detangler to use, how to braid without pulling. He practiced on a synthetic braid he'd bought at the pharmacy for $4. "Okay?" he asked. Lily tilted her head, inspecting in the mirror with the seriousness of a quality inspector. She had his eyes gray-green, a little sharp, but her mother's hair, dark and thick and prone to tangling at the ends. "Okay," she decided. He let out a small breath. They had breakfast together, toast, sliced apple, the last of the orange juice. Lily ate carefully. She had started being careful with things lately, in a way that Daniel noticed but didn't entirely understand. She folded her napkin. She put her cup back exactly where she'd found it. He watched her without saying anything, cataloging, processing, storing it somewhere for later. Outside, the Willard Street apartment building had one working radiator in the hallway, and thin walls. Their unit was the third-floor front, and the window above the kitchen sink let in a thin bead of cold air no matter how many times Daniel had resealed it. He'd done it twice himself. It still leaked. He'd come to accept it the way you come to accept a scar, not forgetting it's there, just no longer surprised by it. He worked for a maintenance contractor, commercial buildings, mostly HVAC systems, plumbing infrastructure, the invisible bones of office towers and retail complexes. He was good at it. He was, in fact, exceptionally good at it. He could look at a system and understand it the way some people can look at a sentence and understand its grammar. Not just the parts and their functions, but the logic connecting them, the failure points, the places where pressure accumulated quietly before it burst. He'd been doing it since he was 22, when he dropped out of engineering school to pay off a debt his father left behind. He never went back. He told himself it didn't matter. On most days, he believed it. Lily came to the kitchen doorway with her coat already on. "Daddy." 1 second. He was counting coins at the kitchen table. Not anxiously, methodically. The way he did everything. He'd been saving for 2 months. Quarters, dimes, nickels. Some of it from a jar on the counter where he dropped change every evening when he came home. Some from the small envelope he'd kept in his jacket pocket. He sorted them by denomination, stacked them neatly, and counted. $43.70, plus the $12 folded in his wallet. $55.70 total. It was enough. Today was Lily's birthday. She was turning 7 tomorrow, but he'd promised her they'd go today, a Saturday, to pick something out. He'd asked her, carefully and seriously, as he always asked her things, what she wanted. She'd thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "A snow globe." one with a little house inside and glitter snow. She'd seen one months ago in a shop window somewhere, and described it in such specific detail, the green roof, the way the snow fell slowly, that Daniel suspected she'd been thinking about it ever since. He'd looked it up. He knew where to find it. He put the coins in a Ziploc bag, folded it, and slid it into his jacket pocket. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." Lily took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm inside his cracked ones. They walked to the bus stop in the cold, and Daniel Hayes said nothing about the frost, or the ache in his right knee, or the fact that the coins made a soft, clinking sound against his thigh with every step. He just walked. And Lily walked beside him. And the city moved around them like it always did. Indifferent, beautiful, cold. The Hargrove Center occupied 4 city blocks on the east side of downtown. It had opened 6 years ago, and Daniel remembered the ribbon cutting, the aerial photographs in the paper. He'd read about its construction because he knew the mechanical systems underneath it. He'd been on a subcontract team that installed the climate infrastructure in the lower levels during the final build phase. Spent 4 months in those tunnels. He hadn't been inside the finished building since. He and Lily came through the main entrance from the East Plaza, and the automatic doors parted with a soft, pneumatic exhale. And the warmth hit first, expensive warmth. The kind that feels intentional, climate-controlled to a specific degree of comfort. Then the light. Then the scale. Lily stopped walking. She stood just past the threshold, her hand still in his, her eyes moving up and sideways and across the atrium, ceiling glass and steel. 4 stories high, pale winter light diffused through frosted panels above. Escalators rose in slow diagonals. Below them, the marble floor gleamed in a pattern of cream and soft gray, unbroken except for the low islands of display cases and the thin geometric lines of decorative brass inlay. "It's big," she said. "Yeah," Daniel said. She looked at him. "Have you been here before?" "In the basement," he said. She considered this with appropriate gravity. "Is the basement nice?" "It's mostly pipes." She nodded, satisfied, and they walked forward. The store he was looking for was on the 2nd level. According to the directory near the entrance, Whitmore and Lane. Gifts and home decor, Suite 214. He'd looked it up twice this week. To confirm the inventory, confirmed it once more the night before. He wasn't the kind of man who made a trip without confirming. They took the escalator. Lily gripped the rubber rail with both hands and watched the floor drop away beneath her with wide, solemn eyes. A woman in a camel coat stepped past them on the left, phone pressed to her ear, glossy bags on each arm. A security guard near the top glanced in their direction, a brief scan. Professional, and looked away. Daniel noticed the scan. The 2nd level was quieter, arranged in longer corridors with warmer lighting. The shoppers moved more slowly. The displays were more considered, fewer items, more space between them. Their clothes stood out, not badly. But they stood out. Daniel wore a clean dark wool coat he'd owned for 6 years, now showing wear at the cuffs and collar. Lily wore a red puffer jacket, bright, cheerful, slightly too large for her, bought last season and sized up for growth. Her boots had a scuff on the left toe he'd tried to buff out that morning. A saleswoman near the entrance of a clothing boutique watched them pass. Her expression didn't change, exactly. It just stayed very still. Daniel didn't slow his pace. Lily was pressing her nose briefly against the glass of a display case, figurines, small porcelain animals, when he touched her shoulder gently and redirected. "We're almost there," he said. "What's that one?" she asked, pointing at the figure of a white fox. "A fox. Can we look later?" "Sure." They found Whitmore and Lane 2 doors down. The sign was brass lettering on dark green. Understated and expensive looking. Inside, the store smelled of cedar and something warm and citrus adjacent. The shelves were neatly curated. Framed prints, leather-bound notebooks, small sculptures, jewelry boxes with velvet interiors, and in the center display case, near the back, a row of snow globes. Lily saw them immediately. She walked toward them the way she walked toward things she deeply wanted. Quietly, almost reverent. Her hands clasped in front of her. The globes ranged in size from small to substantial, and their third from the left was the one. A white house with a green roof, surrounded by bare trees and a low fence, dusted with fine glitter snow that caught the light even before it was shaken. The base was dark wood, polished smooth. Lily looked at it for a long moment without touching. "Is that the one?" Daniel asked, though he already knew. "Yes," she said. He checked the small tag hanging from the base. $48. He had 55 and 70 cents. He exhaled once. Slow. "Okay," he said. "Let's get it." The cashier was young mid-20s. Daniel guessed with a practiced expression of pleasant helpfulness that shifted into something slightly different when they approached the counter. Not hostile, just recalibrating. The way a system recalibrates when the input doesn't match the expected parameters. Her name tag said CHLO. "Hi there," she said. "Finding everything okay?" "Yes, thanks," Daniel said. He set the snow globe on the counter carefully. "Just this, please." "Of course." She scanned it. "That'll be $48 even." Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. He set the folded $12 on the counter. First, 2 5s, 2 1s, smoothed flat. Then he took out the Ziploc bag. He opened it. He set the coins on the marble counter in careful stacks, the way he'd arranged them at the kitchen table that morning. Quarters in one column, dimes in another. The nickels beside them. Chloe watched this. Her pleasant expression held its shape for a moment, then began a slow, complicated journey towards somewhere else. Daniel counted without rushing. 25, 50, 75, $1. Stack by stack, methodical, precise. He counted $36 in coins, which, together with the $12 in bills, brought the total to 48. Exactly. He looked up. Behind him, 2 women had entered the line. One of them tall, in a pale coat, carrying a small bag, glanced at the coins on the counter. Her eyes moved to her companion. Something passed between them. Chloe had stopped smiling entirely. "Sir," she said. Daniel met her eyes. "Sir, we..." She paused. She glanced over her shoulder briefly, as if looking for backup, then back at him. Her voice dropped its pleasant register and took on a different quality. Not cruel, exactly, flat, like she'd decided on an approach and was committing to it. "We don't typically. I mean, we can't really..." She wasn't finishing her sentences. He waited. Lily had moved slightly behind him. Just a small shift of weight. He felt it through the grip of her hand. "We don't accept coin payments," Chloe said finally. She said it clearly, at a volume slightly larger than necessary. The word coin landed in the air of the store with a particular quality. One of the women behind him made a soft sound. Not a laugh exactly. Adjacent to a laugh. Daniel looked at the coins on the counter. He looked at Chloe. He kept his face very still. "It's legal tender," he said. "All of it. I understand that. But our policy, your policy requires a posted notice for cash restrictions. There isn't one at the register." A brief silence. Chloe stared at him. She clearly hadn't expected that. The store had gone quiet in the way that spaces go quiet when something uncomfortable is happening. A kind of attention had gathered near the counter, the particular, silent attention of people pretending not to watch while watching. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm going to need to ask you." "My name is Daniel Hayes," he said, still quietly. "I'd like to purchase the snow globe. The total is $48. "I have $48 on the counter." Lily's grip tightened on his sleeve. He didn't look down at her. He kept his eyes on Chloe. Not aggressive. Not retreating. Just present. The woman in the pale coat behind him had stopped pretending. She was watching openly now, her expression arranged in the configuration of someone who has decided they are a bystander and is comfortable with that role. "There's a line," she said, not to Daniel specifically, but to the general air. He didn't turn around. Chloe reached for the phone beneath the counter and pressed a key. "I need a manager to the register at Whitmore," she said. Quietly, but not quietly enough. And then Lily spoke. In a very small voice. Daddy. One word. Not frightened. Not demanding. Just, I'm here. Are you okay? Daniel put his hand over hers on his sleeve, just placed his palm over her small fingers and let it rest there. He stood very still. The manager, a woman in her 30s named, according to her lanyard, Patricia, arrived from a back corridor within 90 seconds. She assessed the situation from a slight distance before approaching. The professional habit of someone who had walked into difficult conversations before and learned to read them first. Her eyes went to the coins, then to Daniel, then to Chloe. What seems to be the issue? This customer is attempting to pay with Chloe began. Legal tender, Daniel said. Patricia looked at the counter. She looked at the neat stacks of coins, the bills beside them, the $48 total perfectly assembled. Something crossed her face, a flicker of something that might have been discomfort. Or recognition. Or both. And then her expression settled into the professional neutral that her role required. Sir, I understand. But our store does have a policy regarding— Show it to me, he said. A pause. I'm sorry? The posted policy. Show me where it's written. Patricia looked at him steadily. I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. I haven't done anything wrong. Sir, I have $48. The item costs $48. My daughter would like to have the snow globe. He said it without heat, without plea. Just the plain architecture of the situation, laid out as precisely as he laid out anything. The pause that followed was longer this time. The man near the leather goods display had stopped browsing. The woman with the framed print had set it down. The woman in the pale coat behind him had taken a small step to the side, away from the situation, as if adjusting her proximity to something she no longer wanted to be near. The guard's name was Marcus Webb, and he'd been working the second level of the Hargrove Center for 4 years. A large man, broad through the shoulders, with the practiced calm of someone who'd learned that the most effective security presence didn't need to be aggressive to be felt. He was good at his job. He arrived at Whitmore and Lane within 2 minutes of Patricia's second call. He took in the scene with one slow pass, the coins on the counter. Daniel, still standing exactly where he'd been, hand over his daughters. The cluster of passive observers. He approached Daniel directly. Sir, he said. His voice was measured, not unkind. I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. Daniel looked at him. Come with you? Where? Away from the register. We can talk outside. I haven't done anything illegal. Sir, the store has the right to refuse service. They haven't refused service. They've objected to the payment form. There's a difference. Webb looked at him for a moment. He recognized something in Daniel's manner. Not defiance, not aggression. Something quieter, the stillness of a man who had been through things before and was not afraid of this. Sir, he said again, gently. Please. Daniel looked at Lily. She was looking up at him with those gray-green eyes, her face carefully composed in the way of a child who is watching to see how this is handled. Not afraid, trusting, waiting to understand how her father navigated things like this, because that was how she would learn. He held her gaze for 1 second. Then he looked back at Webb. Okay, he said. He didn't argue. He didn't explain further. He began to gather the coins from the counter slowly, without resentment, returning them to the bag the way he'd taken them out. Methodical. Coins into stacks, stacks into the bag. The $12 folded back into his wallet. The snow globe remained on the counter. Lily watched it. She said nothing. Daniel picked up the bag, tucked it back into his pocket, and turned to follow Marcus Webb toward the corridor. He didn't look at Chloe. He didn't look at Patricia. He didn't look at the woman in the pale coat. He took Lily's hand, and they walked. The store had gone very quiet behind them. Not the quiet of resolution. The quiet of a room that has just watched something happen and hasn't yet decided how to feel about it. Lily's fingers wrapped tightly around his. He could feel the tension in them, not panic, not tears. Just grip. The grip of a child who doesn't fully understand what happened but understands that it wasn't right. They were almost at the corridor entrance. That's when it happened. The woman came through the main entrance of the second level at 11:47 on a Saturday morning, moving at the brisk, purposeful pace of someone who did not come to the Hargrove Center to shop. She came 2 or 3 times a year, unannounced, the way she preferred to do most things. Her name was Eleanor Grant. She was 51 years old, the founder and CEO of Hargrove Group, the real estate and retail conglomerate that owned, among other properties, the Hargrove Center. She had built it from a single commercial property in Burlington over 19 years, through 2 market crashes and 1 near bankruptcy, and decisions her board called reckless at the time and visionary after they paid off. She was not a tall woman, but she moved as if she were, and people tended to step slightly out of her way without fully knowing why. She was walking toward the management suite when she turned the corner from the north corridor and saw, ahead of her, a security guard leading a man and a small child toward the exit. She noticed the child first. A girl, red jacket, small boots with a scuffed left toe, dark hair in a neat braid. Eleanor's pace slowed. Then she saw the man. She stopped. She had not seen Daniel Hayes in 7 years. She had thought about him more times than she would have been comfortable admitting thought about him on the day the Hargrove Center opened. Standing in this very atrium, listening to the architect describe the climate infrastructure. Thinking he would have found that interesting. She had thought about him when she wrote the check, the one she'd never been able to send because she didn't have an address. Still in a file in her office, folded inside a letter she'd drafted 4 times before accepting that some debts couldn't be repaid by mail. She was looking at him now. He was walking calmly toward the corridor exit, hand around his daughter's. The back of his dark coat, slightly worn at the collar. He hadn't seen her yet. Eleanor Grant looked at the security guard. She looked at the door they were heading toward. She looked at the small girl in the red jacket. Something settled in her chest with the finality of something that has been a long time settling. "Stop," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Marcus Webb stopped. He turned toward the voice. Eleanor Grant was walking toward them from the north corridor. No entourage, no assistant, no security of her own. Just her. In a dark coat, a scarf she hadn't taken off yet, carrying a folder that she'd forgotten she was carrying. She was looking past him. Webb had worked here 4 years. He had seen Eleanor Grant twice in that time. He recognized her the way you recognize someone who fundamentally alters the architecture of a room when they enter it without drama, without announcement, but completely. He stepped to the side. Eleanor came to a stop in front of Daniel Hayes. Daniel had turned when he heard her voice. He was looking at her now, standing very still. The way he stood when he was processing something. She could see it, the brief recalibration behind his eyes, the quiet reassembly of the situation. His daughter looked up at the woman who had appeared. Eleanor looked at Daniel. He looked at her. For 3 seconds, nobody in the gallery moved. The woman in the pale coat, who had drifted out of the store into the main gallery, stood frozen near a display pillar. Patricia, who had followed at a distance, stopped walking. Chloe, visible through the store entrance, had gone completely still behind her counter. Eleanor took 1 breath. Then she said, "Sir," not the way store employees said it as punctuation, as distancing. She said it the way you say the name of something you've been looking for. Webb stared. Chloe, from inside the store, stared. Patricia stared. The woman in the pale coat took a slow, barely perceptible step backward, as if needing to revise her position relative to what she was witnessing. Eleanor reached out briefly, formally, and offered her hand. Daniel looked at it for a moment. Then he shook it. "Eleanor," he said. His voice was even. It had always been even. She had forgotten that, or not forgotten, but lost the immediate memory of it. The way you lose the specific timbre of a voice over years. Hearing it now, it was exactly as she remembered. Unhurried. Precise. Giving nothing away. "I didn't know you were in Hartford," she said. "I've been here a while." A pause. Both of them, very briefly, not saying anything. 7 years of silence, compressed into a 2-second gap. Then Eleanor turned. She looked at Patricia. She looked at Chloe inside the store. She looked at Marcus Webb. Her expression had not changed exactly. It had simply become very, very clear. Please bring the item to the register, she said, and have the full transaction processed. They stood just off the main gallery, near a bench between two potted olive trees, while Patricia went back to the store. Webb had retreated with the quiet efficiency of a man who understood when a situation was no longer his. Lily was sitting on the bench. She had found a small piece of brass inlay in the floor near her boot and was examining it with the intensity she brought to most small, specific things. She wasn't listening to the adults, or was listening in the way that children listen when they're pretending not to, which is to say, carefully. Eleanor spoke first. "I've been trying to find you," she said. She kept her voice low. Not conspiratorial, just private. "I'm not hard to find," Daniel said. "You weren't at the address you gave us. I moved, twice." She looked at him. He was watching his daughter. "Why didn't you?" She stopped herself. Started again. "We owe you money. The company owes you money." He didn't respond to that. "Danielle, I know," he said. She waited. "I wasn't." He paused. Chose the words carefully, the way he always had. "I wasn't trying to make it difficult. I just didn't want it." Eleanor studied his face. 7 years ago, when the Hargrove Center was still a construction project, and the mechanical infrastructure of the lower levels was failing, a design flaw buried in the interface between the climate control system and the structural drainage, it had been Daniel Hayes who found it. Not a consultant, not a senior engineer. A maintenance worker who came in to inspect a secondary pump and stayed 2 hours because something didn't feel right. He drafted a 12-page technical analysis on his personal laptop and emailed it directly to the project management firm, bypassing 3 levels of hierarchy, because he didn't think the issue could wait. He was right. The flaw would have caused catastrophic drainage failure within the first 18 months. Cost of post-construction repair: millions. Liability exposure: larger. The building certificate of occupancy would likely have been suspended. He'd submitted the analysis, answered the follow-up calls, participated in the remediation design meeting. Then, when the legal team drew up a consultant agreement entitling him to a finder's fee, a number reaching into 6 figures, he declined to sign. He said he'd just done his job. Eleanor had tried 3 times over subsequent years to have the payment processed anyway. Every avenue had closed. He'd moved. Changed phones. The maintenance contractor had dissolved. She'd kept the check. Now she was looking at him in the atrium of the building he had, by any reasonable measure, saved. "The coins," she said. He glanced at her. "That's what they're saying inside. That you tried to pay with coins." "I paid with $48, he said. 12 of it was bills." A pause. "Why not?" She stopped again. Looked at him directly. "Is money tight right now?" He was quiet for a moment. "I save change," he said. "I've always saved change. It adds up." He looked at Lily, who was now standing up from the bench and examining one of the olive trees at close range. "I had enough. That's what mattered." Eleanor heard something in that. She didn't push it. The coins weren't poverty. They weren't a statement. They were the savings of a man who had learned to make things work with what was in front of him, a habit so ingrained he didn't think of it as a habit anymore. He'd saved 2 months of loose change for his daughter's birthday. Done the math. Confirmed the inventory. Arrived with the exact amount required. The failure of imagination had been entirely on the other side of the counter. "I'd like to settle the account," Eleanor said. "What we owe you, it's been sitting." "I don't want it," he said again. "Danielle, Eleanor." He turned to look at her now. His voice was still even. Still precise. "I appreciate it. I do. But I didn't write that analysis to get paid. I wrote it because the system had a flaw in it, and someone was going to get hurt." She held his gaze. "Then let me do something else," she said. He waited. "Let me fix today," she said. Just today. Eleanor walked back into Whitmore and Lane. The store was quiet in the way of places where everyone is pretending to resume what they were doing before. Chloe was behind the counter, suddenly focused on something on her screen. Patricia was near the back, straightening a display that didn't need straightening. The snow globe was still on the counter. Eleanor stopped, just inside the entrance. "Chloe," the young woman looked up. Eleanor walked to the counter. She stood where Daniel had stood, and she looked at the space on the marble surface where the coins had been the neat stacks, the bills folded beside them. "What happened here this morning was not acceptable," she said. Chloe opened her mouth. "I'm not asking for an explanation," Eleanor said. "I'm telling you what I saw. A man came to your register with the correct payment for an item. He was refused. He was embarrassed in front of his daughter, and security was called." She paused. "That is not how any customer is treated in this building." Chloe's face had gone very still. "I want you to understand that clearly," Eleanor continued. "Not because you're in trouble, because you're going to encounter a lot of people in your life who look like they don't belong in the rooms they're standing in. Think every single time about what you actually know about them, which is almost nothing." She let that sit. Patricia had come forward from the back, standing near the counter, her lanyard still against her chest. Eleanor looked at her. "Patricia, I'd like you to personally complete the transaction correctly, and I'd like a handwritten apology given to the customer before he leaves today." Patricia nodded quickly. "His daughter turns 7 tomorrow. Have the snow globe gift wrapped." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The coins were legal tender," Eleanor said. "Every one of them. And even if they weren't, the way you speak to someone matters. The volume at which you speak to them matters. The way their child is made to feel matters." A pause. "That's all." She walked out. In the main gallery, she found Daniel standing where she'd left him, watching Lily, who had moved from the olive tree to a display of decorative lanterns nearby, and was crouching to look at the smallest one at eye level. She handed him an envelope. "My card," she said. "My direct number is on the back, not the office. My phone." She paused. "For whatever it's worth, if you ever want the account settled, or anything else, I'd like the chance to make it right properly." He took the envelope without looking at it. He put it in his pocket. "Thank you," he said. It wasn't dismissal. It was just, "I hear you. I'll think about it." They stood for a moment in the quiet of the gallery. "She looks like you," Eleanor said, nodding toward Lily. "Mostly," he said. "She has her mother's hair." "Is she?" Eleanor hesitated. "No," he said. "It's just us." Eleanor nodded. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." Something about him suggested he didn't particularly want that, and she'd gotten better over the years at not offering condolences where they weren't wanted. "Happy birthday to her," she said. He almost smiled. "Not quite. She's going to be very pleased about that snow globe," he said. Eleanor looked at it through the store window, the White House, the green roof, the glitter suspended inside the glass globe, waiting for someone to shake it and send it spinning. "It's a good one," she said. Patricia brought the snow globe herself. It was wrapped in pale green paper with a small white ribbon, not elaborate, not fussy. Clean and careful. She handed it to Daniel with a handwritten note folded and tucked beneath the ribbon. She said, "I'm sorry for how you were treated today." And she said it in a voice that was not performing the apology, just making it. Daniel accepted it. He looked at the note briefly, a few lines, handwritten in a small, even script on store stationery. Then tucked it into his jacket pocket beside Eleanor's card and the Ziploc bag of coins. He didn't make anything of it. He looked at Lily. She was watching the package with the barely contained attention of a child who was trying very hard to be patient and mostly succeeding. Her hands were clasped in front of her. Her eyes were large. "Thank you," Daniel said to Patricia. He said it the way he said most things, simply, and meaning it, and without the weight of everything else that had happened in the last 40 minutes, pressing down into the words. Just, "Thank you." Patricia nodded. She went back inside. He and Lily stood in the gallery. He handed her the package. She held it the way you hold something you've wanted for a long time, carefully, with both hands, as if it might not be real yet. They didn't stay. They didn't look back at the store, or at the security station near the North Corridor, or at any of the faces that had been watching earlier. The gallery had returned to its normal rhythm, shoppers, moving, soft music in the ceiling. the escalators running their quiet diagonal courses. It was as if the morning had smoothed itself over. They took the escalator down. Lily stood on the step below Daniel, the package held against her chest, watching the ground floor rise toward them. The marble floor, the brass inlay, the pale winter light through the high glass ceiling. Near the exit, she stopped. "Daddy." "Yeah." She was looking up at him with those gray-green eyes. The question had been forming for a while, he could tell by the careful way she was arranging it. "Why did she call you, sir?" Lily asked. "That lady." She said it different. He thought about how to answer that. He thought about the 7 years. The check in a file somewhere. The analysis he'd written in his truck in a parking lot at 10 o'clock at night, because he couldn't leave the problem alone. The months in the tunnels below this building when it was still framework and concrete. The way systems worked, how everything had an architecture, a logic, a set of invisible load-bearing points. And if you paid attention, you could see where things were about to fail. He thought about what he'd told himself all those years ago when he turned down the money. "I just did my job." And he thought about Lily, standing on a bench, looking at brass inlay, crouching to examine a small lantern, holding the snow globe like something fragile and precious. He thought about what he was building. In the slow way you build things you can't see yet, the invisible architecture of her understanding of the world. "Because respect matters," he said. She looked at him. "Considering." "She respected you," Lily said. "Yeah. Why didn't the other ones?" He was quiet for a moment. "They didn't know me," he said. "And they didn't know you. They made a guess before they knew anything." He paused. "People do that. It's not always because they're bad. Sometimes they're just moving fast, not really looking." Lily was still watching him. "Were you sad?" she asked. He thought about it honestly. "A little," he said. "Me too," she said. "A little." He put his hand on her shoulder briefly. She leaned into it for a second. The way she did sometimes, just a small lean, just making contact. Then she straightened up. "Can we look at the fox on the way out?" she asked. He almost smiled again. This time, it made it all the way. "Yeah," he said, "we can look at the fox." They walked back toward the second level briefly, long enough to stop at the display case where the porcelain fox sat on a square of velvet, white with dark eyes, perfectly still. Lily pressed her nose briefly against the glass, studied it. "It's nice," she said. "It is. It doesn't have a snow globe, though," she said. This settled the matter. They walked back down and out through the east exit into the cold. The city received them the way it always did, without ceremony, without comment. Just the gray November air, the frost still faintly visible in the shaded patches between buildings, the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Lily shifted the snow globe to one arm and took his hand with the other. He felt the weight of the package through her arm against his side. He felt the coins in his pocket, still there. Still in the bag, $43.70, unnecessary now. Waiting to go back into the jar on the kitchen counter. He thought, she's going to shake it tonight, and the snow is going to fall. And that thought was enough for right now. That was the whole thing, really. The whole reason they'd come. They walked to the bus stop in the cold. Daniel Hayes said nothing about the morning about the counter, or the cashier, or the security guard's measured voice saying please. He said nothing about Eleanor Grant, or what she owed him, or the card in his pocket with her direct number on the back. He would think about those things later, in the quiet of the apartment after Lily was asleep. He would take out the card, read the number, fold it, and put it in the drawer. He would not make any decisions about it tonight. Tonight there was the bus, and the cold, and the green-wrapped package under Lily's arm, and the particular quality of her grip on his hand, tight, specific, certain. Lily looked at the snow globe in her arm, then up at the gray sky, then at him. This was a good day, she said. He thought about that. He thought about the marble counter, and the coins in careful stacks, and the way the cashier's voice had carried, and the soft laughter from behind him, and the security guard's face, not cruel, just doing what he understood to be his job. He thought about the quiet that fell over the store. He thought about Eleanor's face when she saw him, the way something in it resolved, like a calculation finally completing. He thought about Lily on the bench, examining the brass inlay in the floor. "Yeah," he said. The bus came. They got on. They found 2 seats together near the window, and Lily pressed her face briefly against the cold glass to watch the Hargrove Center recede the glass facade, the pale winter light off its upper panels, the plaza below emptying in the cold. Then it was gone, and Lily turned back around, the snow globe in her lap, her fingers already finding the base where the wood was smooth and dark and warm from being held. She shook it. The snow rose inside the glass, fine white glitter lifting and drifting, catching the gray light through the bus window, settling slowly over the White House with the green roof and the bare trees and the low fence. She watched it fall. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. They rode home in the quiet, and the snow fell inside the globe, and Daniel Hayes kept his hand over his daughter's, and the bus moved through the city, and the cold settled around them, present, familiar, and no longer very important.